When it comes to our life and our general peace and overall enjoyment of our experience here, I feel like it's important to learn that acceptance is sort of vital to your own comfort. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean you just have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable parts of life, but understand that your expectation and assumptions often contribute to your perception of that comfort. And when it comes to my own comfort, I think the greatest thing that helped me was just to stop expecting and start accepting. To not necessarily base my experience or base my life on anything but me. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way or selfish way. Of course, I still interact with people, still take their words, still find value in everything outside of me. But more than everything, I found value for what's inside of me already. And I feel like in instantiating that there's already some values to be placed within our present moment, within ourselves, here we sort of open the door to more understanding of who we are, more understanding of what's out here for us to gain. And I feel like in referencing everything we lack, we lose everything we stand to gain. And in our inability to, I guess, broaden our perspective and open the door to sort of new modes of thought and new ways to be, we're keeping ourselves in that stuck, stagnant place. And I feel like acceptance is sort of just allowing yourself to not assume, or sort of pushing the idea that you don't necessarily need to expect things to be a certain way in order to find comfort. Peace is a mentality. I don't think it's a place, and I don't think it's a certain set of characteristics. Of course, there's certain things that make you more peaceful, that make you feel more tranquil, but I feel like it's important to sort of find that within yourself. So no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, you can find peace within it. I think accepting situations for what they are is a good stepping stone, and especially accepting yourself for what you are. Because I feel like you can't hear what you don't acknowledge, and you need to, I guess, get some sort of baseline in order to move forward. And I think what's been not even troubling me, what I've been focused on recently is trying to understand, parts of myself that are seeking out change more deeply. Like whenever I feel anxious, whenever I feel that worry, truly sitting with that emotion, truly sitting with everything that encompasses it, understanding the thoughts that led to it, so I can address why I feel that way and why, I even have that preconceived notion. And I find that a lot of times in life we have those notions because of things we've implanted within ourselves that aren't grounded in reality. Like you tell yourself one day that you're ugly, and then the next day you feel ugly, the next day you feel ugly, until you start to tell yourself otherwise. That's why I feel like affirmation is very important. And when it comes to our own progression and our own, I guess, movement forward as it relates to our goals and aspirations, I feel like honesty is very important. I feel like we need to accept ourselves for what we are so we can begin to grow. Because if we don't, then we don't open the door for our learning. If we already try to accept the fact, or we are presenting ourselves with the idea that we know everything or we know everything about ourselves, then there's no growth. There's nothing to be added because you think that you already have closed the equation that is you. And I think it's important to sort of keep that door open when it comes to yourself, because there's always going to be new opportunities and new things in your path. And I feel like there's a lot of things that contribute to that sort of acceptance and honesty. And with that being said, I would like to mention our sponsor of today's video, which is Hanley. Very thankful to them for sponsoring this video. And if you guys aren't familiar with Hanley, it's a uncomplicated skincare brand. And I think skincare is one of those things in life that sort of is important and something that you do need to accept. Like with myself, I used to have a sort of bad relationship to my skin, but I think it was really just because of the expectation that it was already supposed to be okay, or the expectation that I didn't have to do anything, or I didn't even want to. And I feel like those certain biases that we hold within ourselves sort of contribute to our own undoing. And this is a great example of it. Because it wasn't until I truly accepted the fact that I might need to do a little bit extra for this, might need to do a little extra for that, that I truly started to see some change within, I guess, my skin. So if without further ado, I'll start listening to some of their products. They sent me over this exfoliating brush. That's probably my favorite thing, but they start off with a level 1 system, which contains a wash, a scrub, a PM and AM moisturizer, and the AM moisturizer has a sunscreen in it. But because they're sponsoring this video, they're giving you guys a deal. If you guys click the description or the link in my description, you're going to get 40% off your first skincare box, and they're going to give you a free exfoliating brush as well. So if you guys are into skincare or into that in any sense, or want to accept your skin for what it is, I would recommend clicking the link in the description. So when it comes to skincare and our general acceptance of who we are, I feel like it's always been important to sort of look at yourself with an uncritical eye. And when I say that, I don't mean that you're supposed to ignore your flaws, but to say that you're supposed to accept them. And I feel like our connotation as negative is sort of what contributes to our reluctance to sort of address the issue. Like with your skincare or with anything having to do with yourself, I feel like if you think that you don't want to accept yourself for what it is, like if I think of myself as out of shape, I'll just, instead of, I guess, working out, sometimes I would have told myself, oh, I'm in shape, or I'm good, or I'm this way, because I am more afraid of, that connotation that I have of being unfit than actually putting in the work to be fit. And I think that's part of what acceptance allows you to do. It allows you to see things for what they are, and also gives you the opportunity to create more. Because in accepting things for what they are, you also see potentials for what they could be. Because things are no longer dictated by your biases in your mind and how you want them to be, but rather how they have potential to be, and how your actions in the present moment can contribute to your greater future. And that's why I feel like everything always starts with that present moment. You have to love where you are in order to love where you're going. And I think that's sort of the most important thing that we can sort of internalize in our head. I feel like happiness isn't something that we should be constantly waiting on. And I feel like we aren't something that we should be constantly waiting on as well. And I feel like the way we wait for ourselves is sort of characteristic of people that expect to never get there. Because we wait on ourselves, but at the same time, we run from the feelings that are from us. We run from our own insecurities, our own fear, our own problems, worry, anxiety, because we think that they aren't inherent to us. But I feel like that very running from it is what makes it inherent. I feel like once we learn to sit still and accept our issues for what they are, accept ourselves for what we are, things no longer become issues and they no longer become inherent to us. Because once you can, I guess, sit still enough and look at a situation and look at that problem and look at your anxiety and look at this, that, and the other, you realize that the very notion of you being able to look at it, the very notion of you being able to sit there separate from it, invokes that separateness. It allows you to realize, and allows your body in a way to realize that you aren't that problem, you aren't that feeling, you aren't this, that, and the other. And I think severing that relationship to our feelings sort of promotes a new understanding of what it is to be. And I feel like being in any real way is to accept everything for what it is. And in that acceptance, you find that everything is new. It's about accepting each and every moment like a new moment, and truly experiencing the beauty that is to be alive. Because I feel like once we're stuck in that reference, if we're constantly thinking of how this relates to this and how this is this and this is that, and how I am only this compared to this person, we lose all of ourselves. When we look for ourselves, we lose ourselves, because the only place you can find yourself is where you are. And that's why I feel like it's important to sort of accept. We go out on these tumultuous journeys to try to, I guess, find ourselves and depict ourselves. And, we go through certain circumstances and certain events that sort of complement our character and contribute to what we understand ourselves to be. And I feel like in being present and being accepting, it allows you to sort of see your thought process to a greater, I guess, clarity. And I think once you can see that thought process and that general understanding of who you currently are, you can recognize which pieces and parts are sort of not inherent to you truly. Like, I feel like sometimes we have misconceptions about ourselves as it relates to how we're received by the world and how we're interacting with it. Because a lot of our perception of our interaction from the world isn't from other people. Other people don't always tell you, oh, you interact with the world like this. Oh, I feel this way when you talk to me. Instead, we try to answer that question for ourselves. And in that anxiety, we often give ourselves the negativity that is that anxiety. Because we're worried about how we express ourselves, we assume that how we express ourselves is negative. And I feel like that's what breeds anxiety in the first place. And I feel like it's not really good to assume in that way. I feel like it's important to sort of be present. And I feel like we can't be present with those situations and truly understand how we interact with the world if we don't understand how to be present in accepting and interact with ourselves. I feel like a lot of things happen when you start accepting. A lot of things happen once you learn how to be still with who you are. And I don't mean be still in the sense like, oh, you have to go out there and meditate or you have to isolate yourself from the world. But you have to isolate yourself from your thoughts. Understand that who you are is not always dictated by everything you think. And sometimes what you think is dictated by other people's thoughts. And it's important to sort of gather some sort of baseline and understanding for who you are. So what you are and who you are isn't based off of other people, but based off of you. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way, and I always say that. Because I feel like even when I've learned to accept myself for what I am and I've truly tried to find some type of foundation within myself, it's only made me care about other people and other situations with a greater depth. Because once you realize that you have your own complex life and there's beauty to that and you learn to love that and learn to invest positivity within that, then you recognize that other people have the same exact experience. And in doing that, you won't want to put anybody down because it's like putting yourself down. And understanding that we all have that shared struggle, all have that shared, I guess, issue. Then you realize the beauty that is our own individuality. You know, I feel like in your acceptance, you find so many more reasons to love yourself because you begin to see yourself out of reference. You know, I feel like you really get to see the significance that is your individual existence once you stop referencing it to other existences. Because we constantly put ourselves against people subconsciously for no reason. We can't compete where we don't compare, and we don't compare in a lot of ways. And it's important to not compare yourself to things that aren't you. Like, no one's better at being Ian than me. Ian as in me, not as in the general name. But I feel like it's important to sort of set that with yourself. Life is too short to sort of wait on it to happen and wait for yourself to be a prominent figure within your own life. If all you do is live in reference, then you'll never be the subject. And I think being the subject of your own life is sort of the point of existence. I don't mean the subject of your own life to say that everything has to be about you. But at least to some degree, your love should be vested within yourself and some of your attention should be vested within you too. You know, I feel like we put ourselves on the back burner too often for us to truly experience what it is to experience self-love. And it shouldn't have any condition. Because we try so hard to find reasons to love ourselves, to find reasons for this, to even find ourselves and to understand ourselves to a greater depth. And I don't think we learn about ourselves in that effort at all. I don't think learning about yourself is some type of forced thing, like, oh, I have to force myself to do this, to learn about myself. I have to force myself to write, to learn about myself. When I think you just have to be present enough to listen, present enough to see, you know, how you express yourself in certain situations, how you feel in certain situations, and learning how to accept that feeling and accept where it comes from so you can understand what you need to do to move forward. So you can understand who you are in terms of your thought and who you are in terms of yourself. And when I say that, I mean that your thought and yourself, I feel like, are very separate things. How we think about ourselves changes on a day-to-day basis. So we have to realize that there has to be some foundation for ourselves, some foundation for who you are as a person void of your thought. And I feel like that can only be found when we take a step back from our mind and allow ourselves to be seen and heard void of that bias. And for me, that really just took, I guess, giving myself audience. Like, whenever I felt something, instead of trying to overpower it with some type of positivity or overpower it with some type of, oh, I'm not that way, or that's not true, or da-da-da, I sat with the emotion. You know, you sit with those feelings, you sit with those realizations, you sit with the things that make you uncomfortable until they're comfortable. And I feel like that's how you sort of overcome them. By realizing that you aren't the problems. You aren't that feeling. You're something much more. You're the thing feeling it. And I feel like in recognizing where it comes from, you understand where you need to go. Like if I feel a certain way, a certain amount of doubt or anxiety about my exams or about my future, if I recognize that it has no place or no grounds in reality, then all I have to do is let it go. And I feel like letting go is often the hardest part when it comes to people's journey. But I feel like letting go isn't hard as it is difficult in thought. I feel like the thought of it is hard to let go because you're trying to stop yourself from thinking of something by thinking about how to not think about it. And I think it's just important to sort of sit still and sort of take that step back from your mind. And I think some ways that I used to do it was like try to move your body manually. Like do everything in a manual way, or stop listening to music, to get that mental silence. And one more important thing I think is affirmation. Giving yourself new inputs into your head, new baselines and new positive things to sort of fall back on whenever you do feel a certain way. And I feel like for myself, affirmation has helped so much more than I can give it credit for. I started doing affirmations probably like 6 months ago, and I would say it's been life changing. Understanding that your mind and your body and your spirit have to work together. You can't just have one overpowering everything. And I feel like I tried to attack everything in the past with such a strong mind. Try to think through everything, try to think through this problem, think through this. But it wasn't until you incorporate it into your actual being, into your actual day-to-day processes, that I feel like you truly benefit from anything. So I think the importance should always be on accepting the present moment for what it is, accepting yourself for what it is, and moving forward with that acceptance. All that to say, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of you who made it this far in the video, and I appreciate all of you who didn't. I hope everybody's day is going great. I hope everybody's winning their internal battles. All in all, make sure you're treating yourself like a friend, and accept yourself.